Hey, Grandma here again, once again talking about the code for writing the rails. This is part 3 of the code. It is the part that builds the fence, builds the rail, builds the redstone under the rail, builds these 4 control blocks, and even builds the sunflower. Okay, let's take a look at this code. Here it is. This is the code. And notice that some areas are grayed out and some are not. The part of the code we are going to talk about is the part that is not grayed out. And we're going to start here with a function called InitBeginning. InitBeginning is called, remember that we started the program with on-chat commands, and there were quite a number of those. And they determined which mobs would ultimately be available to spawn. All of those on-chat commands end up by calling 2 functions, and one of them is InitBeginning. The other one, which we're going to talk about in the next video, creates the actual spawn list. But InitBeginning is pretty much the centerpiece of the control of the program for building the field. So what InitBeginning does is it first calls moveMe. moveMe moves the player to a new location in the world. Hopefully there's nothing built there before. And then InitBeginning calls setCenter, which sets a variable called center, which will be at the center of the fence and the rail. The next thing it does is it sets the mobs to spawn list to empty. And later on, in the next section, we will add mobs to that list. And then it sets the spawned mob counter to 0. Spawned mob counter is used to count how many mobs have been spawned. If it happens we're spawning them in sequential order, then it's an index into the spawn list. It then sets a variable called a Boolean variable, which I try to start always with a B, spawn at spawn position. And we start off saying that's true. This will be false if the spawning is going to take place in random order. So we'll talk about that later. Then we call the function initSidesAndCorners, which does exactly that. It sets variables which tell how long each side is, and it defines where the corner of the rail and the fence are. It then launches a chat command called fence. It does this as a chat command instead of a function so that it can run asynchronously. That is, it's going to run at the same time as the other code to build the rail. This speeds up the program. In this case, not much, but does a little bit. It calls next calls the function lay redstone and rail, which does exactly what it says. Then it calls the function lay corner blocks. It does these 2 things separately because the corner blocks have to be laid after the straight edges of the rail are laid. And in addition, the corner blocks are not powered rail, they're plain old rail. And the reason they're plain old rail is because there is no powered rail in Minecraft. I'm sorry. Powered rails cannot be corners in Minecraft. That's what I meant to say. And then we say put stuff in player inventory, which does what it says. And that's the stuff like the rail and other useful items. I mean, a minecart and other useful items. Then we set the buttons in the spawn position. Then we put the sunflower in place. And we teleport the player to a place near the control blocks. So that would be very handy. Now let's look. So now we have done this function. Let's go and look at init corners and init sides and corners, which is next. This is pretty straightforward. It sets the rail blocks per side to 20. That's completely arbitrary. I picked it. It calculates half of whatever that is. It then calculates the half side -1, which is a useful number, and it sets the negative half side. Then the rail corner, and this is the northwest corner. Let's look back here at the rail. That would be this corner. So basically this is the northwest corner of the rail. And we can tell that because the sunflower is facing east. So that means that the direction we're looking right now is east. The direction to our right is south, and the direction to our left is north. So this is the northwest corner of the rail. Okay, we then init these corner lists, which we will explain in a minute, and we do the same type of thing for the fence. In fact, it's exactly the same type of thing, but with different dimensions. The fence is 30 blocks per side, which makes it bigger than the rail, which is a good thing. Okay, so now let's go look at something else. Let's see here. Logically, I think we ought to look down here at what this move me thing does. I use this pretty much, okay, where did it go? There it is. All the time. Okay, move me simply moves the player 200 blocks east of where the player currently is. And then it calls set center. Set center does exactly that. It sets a variable called center to the place where the player was, but it is on the ground. That's why the 4 is here. Now, there's also a chat command called move me, and that just calls move me. All that does is it moves the player 200 blocks east. I find it convenient to use that because sometimes after I've used riding the rail, I've got some people riding around on the rail, and they are making so much noise that as I continue programming, they are truly driving me nuts. So I like to move occasionally. Okay, let's go back up here and see logically what would we want to do next. Let's look at where we build a fence. That's here. Okay, now the fence is built in a certain order. I think somewhere I have a drawing of the fence. Let's see. Okay. The fence, it starts here at the northwest position, and then it travels northeast, and then it makes the southeast side to the southeast, to the southwest, and then to the northwest. The fence. Here's the fence. So notice that it starts out here at the fence corner, which we defined earlier, and it doesn't adjust that at all. In fact, this could just be at the fence corner. I think I might change that. Then it goes from there to the fence corner, and it moves east. Now notice this direction is positive. In fact, all the directions in here are positive because the origin position is, because it's in the northwest corner, that means when we move east it's positive, and when we move south it's positive. So all the coordinates for fence are positive. We don't have to worry about any negative coordinates. Okay. Now, next I want to look at this. This is where we set up a list of all the rail corners. This is the first corner, which is the west corner, and then this is the the corner to the east. This is the corner to the southeast, and this is the corner to the southwest. Now notice here, oops, there are two empty spaces here in the definition of this list. Why do you think they're there? They're there because if I don't put them there, this thing goes out horizontally and it's like huge long, and there's no way I could get it on a piece of paper. Turns out that these empty spaces, even if they're at the beginning or in the middle, they have absolutely no effect on the array. They're completely ignored by MakeCode, so that's pretty convenient. Then this last little loop here, I have things called the rail undercorners, and those are the positions just one block down from where the rail corners are. Okay. Next, let's look at how we built the rail. In order to build the rail, we have a function called lay redstone and rail. And it calls build square twice. First, it calls it to place the redstone under the rail. Then it calls it to actually place the rail on top of it. And it calls this function called build square, which takes as input builder level, which is the Y coordinate, the builder fence block that's going to be used, where the builder corner is, and the builder blocks per side. Now, then we call it to order to lay the redstone. Then we set the builder level to 0, which is going to be where the rail is, and the builder fence block to powered rail. And then we call it again. Now, builder square is unique in that it builds the rail, but a square without corners. And of course, the reason we want it to be without corners is we have to place the corners last. So this little weirdness here where we move forward by one here and we'll move forward by one here, blah, 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 turn right in the middle, that's what jumps over the corners. And we have to actually have the builder trace path kind of in the middle because it can trace only one path. From wherever it starts, it has to then trace the path, and we only want segments. We don't want the entire square. Otherwise, we could have placed the mark outside this repeat for and traced the path after. But you can't do that if you want the corners to be empty. Okay, now let's look at where we lay the corner blocks. There's the code for that. Okay, so to lay the corner blocks, we can index through from 0 to 3, and we can do that because, as you remember, we defined the rail corners and the rail under corners before. I have two variables. One here I set to where, which is the rail corner, and that would start at the corner 0, which would be the northwest corner. And then we have the variable called underwhere, and of course that's why I call the first one where. Underwhere is set to the rail undercorners at the same index. So then we first place a cobblestone block, which is where the underwhere position is. And why did I place a cobblestone there? Well, just so when you look at it, you can see quickly that it's not redstone, because it would have been okay to have redstone there. In fact, I used to do that. But as it turns out, it's easier to distinguish the corners if you don't have redstone. We're going to use an unpowered rail, just a regular old rail. The reason is that if we used a powered rail here, it wouldn't automatically turn itself into a corner. And that's a Minecraft feature. And so, why is this here? Well, why are we placing air at where, then pausing, and then putting the rail in? Well, that's because we have an on-chat command called corners, which sometimes the rail corners turn out square. In other words, Minecraft didn't figure out that I wanted a corner Doesn't happen that often, but sometimes it happens. And then sometimes if we use the chat command corners, it will correct itself. But I found that it does it a lot more reliably if I first remove the rail that was there, wait a second or two, not a second actually, a millisecond, 100 milliseconds, and then place the unpowered rail again. Sometimes you have to give up and do it manually, and that's why the rail is unpowered rail is in the hotbar. You just have to break the old one yourself, the one that turned out square, and place right click to place the or tap to place the unpowered rail, and then the corners will go in round. Okay, I bet you didn't want to know all that. Okay, let's see here. And now we're going to place the control buttons. Let me check off this code I've talked about. That, and haven't done that. Done that. Done that. Done that. And that. Done that. And that. And that. And I did all this down here. Okay, that's cool. Okay, now we're going to place the control buttons. Pretty much nothing to that. We remember how we want the control buttons to look. We want a gray one, which can turn to black, brown, the green, and that. And we want them just one block from the rail. And we want the gray one to start, basically at the corner. So the way we do that is, well, let's look here. We want the spawn position to be right there, which is one block to the east of the corner. Okay. So the spawn position is set to one block east of the rail corner. That's cool. It's easy to understand. Then we place all these buttons relative to the spawn position. We could have done it relative to the rail corner. Doesn't make any difference. I just happen to do it this way. And we want the spawn position to be one block basically, it's in line with the rail corner. So it's one block down from the spawn position. The brown block is right in line with the spawn position. Remember that. Let's go back and see. The brown block is right in line with the spawn position. And the green block is one block from there. And the sandstone block is 2 blocks more east. All of the north-south positions are the same, -2. From the spawn position, and that's because you want the blocks to all be in a row. How easy is that? Okay, I do think that we have now succeeded in building the entire field for riding the rail. We did the fence, we laid the redstone, we laid the powered rail, we put the cobblestone under the corners, and we placed an unpowered rail there. Then we placed some blocks and exactly where we wanted them, and that was just more fun than I can explain. Bye!